If you call my cell phone, pick up the phone. I'm not going to give that number, but if you were to call this number, this is what you would get as a message from me. Hi, this is Wayne Dyer that you've reached, and I want to feel good. If your call is designed to do anything other than that, you have reached the wrong number, and I urge you to call Dr. Phil. But feeling good is perhaps the most important thing that I can talk to you about here in cleaning up this link. If you open up the Torah, this ancient spiritual text, the Old Testament, and go to the very opening lines, Genesis 1:1, it says, what? In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. Pretty simple. God is infinite. Out of this source came all the material worlds. And then if you read down 31 lines later, it says, and all that God created was good. So good and God are synonymous, aren't they? Good and God, just an O, just one extra O. So that when you say, I want to feel good, as you'll see as this program unfolds, you're really saying, in a way, I want to feel God. I want to feel whatever this beautiful source of all, this divine mind, this source of all things, I want to feel what it feels. Now you might say to yourself, yeah, it's easy to say I want to feel good, but how can I feel good when so much around me is bad? How can I feel good if my sister-in-law has cancer? And how can I feel good if I know that over on the other side of this planet there are people who are starving to death? And how can I feel good if there are people who are poor and I have money, and there are people who are starving? And how can I feel good when my children act in the way that they act? Or how can I feel good? And I suggest to you that when you say I want to feel good, what you're saying is I want to feel God. I want to feel this. I want to connect here. And I want to offer this to you as a very important and powerful piece of advice that came to me years ago. You cannot get sick enough to heal one person on this planet. And you cannot get poor enough to make one person wealthy on this planet. And you cannot get confused enough to unconfuse one person on this planet. No amount of your feeling bad, when you say feeling bad, what you do is you lose your connection to Source. And when you lose your connection to Source, what happens is you create something called resistance. I can't do this. It's not possible. I don't deserve it. It's just not something that I can do. And when you create this kind of resistance, you have emotions. And these emotions become sadness, fear, worry, anxiety. And what I'd like to offer you is a way for you to use these emotions that you are experiencing at any time in your life and use them as a system, as a barometer, as a guidance system to say to yourself, what kinds of thoughts am I having that are keeping me from being in rapport with this field of intention? And at any moment that you're not feeling good, you are attracting exactly the opposite of what it is that you would like to attract into your life. You are using this as a way to keep yourself from feeling God or feeling good. If you are listening to the news, and the news is filled with all of the reasons why you should be depressed, and it's not an accident that then they are sponsored by all of the reasons why you should take these narcotics or these pills or whatever it is in order to get over. So here's some depression, and wait a minute, we'll be right back. Here's a way out of it, okay? And every thought that you have that says I can't do it is resistance to connecting to Source. And every thought that you have that says it's never worked before, that's resistance to connecting to this Source, to what is being, what I call vibrating to Source energy, getting back to having your desires, what you want to create in vibrational harmony with this highest energy in the universe. My teacher in India one time, Nisargadatta Maharaj, said, when he was asked the question, there's wars going on in Pakistan. There's people having difficulties here. There's people dying. There's starvation. How can you say that I can heal myself and how can you be at peace when you see all of this going around? And you know what he said to his devotee? He said, in my world, nothing ever goes wrong. What a powerful idea that is.
What being open to everything means. Everything means just what it says, no exceptions. When someone suggests something to you that conflicts with your conditioning, rather than responding with, that's ridiculous, we all know that's impossible, say instead, I've never considered that before, I'll think about it. Open yourself up to the spiritual ideas of all people and listen with an open mind to crazy schemes and ideas that at first seem to be outrageous. If someone suggests that crystals can cure hemorrhoids, that natural herbs can lower cholesterol, that people will eventually be able to breathe underwater, or that levitation is possible, listen and be curious. Let go of your attachments to what you've been trained to believe. Open your mind to all possibilities, because whether you believe something is possible or impossible, either way, you'll be right. How can that be true? Your agreement with reality and all that's possible determines what you'll become. If you're convinced that you can't become wealthy and famous or artistic or a professional athlete, a great singer, or whatever, you will act upon that inner conviction that prevents you from manifesting what you'd really like. All that you'll get from your effort is being right. When you need to be right, you're attached to your conditioned reflex of the way things are and always have been, and you assume they always will be. Releasing your attachments. Your attachments are the source of all your problems. The need to be right, to possess someone or something, to win at all costs, to be viewed by others as superior. These are all attachments. The open mind resists these attachments and consequently experiences inner peace and success. To release attachments, you have to make a shift in how you view yourself. If your primary identification is with your body and your possessions, your ego is the dominant force in your life. If you can tame your ego sufficiently, you'll call upon your spirit to be the guiding force in your life. As a spiritual being, you can observe your body and be a compassionate witness to your existence. Your spiritual aspect sees the folly of attachments because your spiritual self is an infinite soul. Nothing can make you happy or successful. These are inner constructs that you bring to your world rather than what you receive from it. If you think peaceful thoughts, you'll feel peaceful emotions, and that's what you'll bring to every life situation. If you're attached to being right or absolutely need something in order to be at peace or to be successful, you'll live a life of striving, yet never arriving. It's possible to have a burning desire, yet not have attachments. You can have an inner vision of what you intend to manifest and still detach yourself from the outcome. How? Consider this observation in A Course in Miracles. Infinite patience produces immediate results. It sounds like a paradox, doesn't it? Infinite patience implies an absolute certainty that what you'd like to manifest will indeed show up in a perfect order and exactly on time. The immediate result you receive from this inner knowing is a sense of peace. When you detach from the outcome, you're at peace, and you'll ultimately see the fruits of your convictions. Suppose you had a choice between two magic wands. With wand A, you can have any physical thing you desire by simply waving it. With wand B, you can have a sense of peace for the rest of your life, regardless of what circumstances arise. Which one would you pick? A guarantee of stuff or inner peace for the remainder of your life? If you opt for peace, then you already have wand B. Simply have a mind that is open to everything but attached to nothing. Let it all come and go as it will. Enjoy it all, but never make your happiness or success dependent on an attachment to anything, any place, and particularly any person. In all of your relationships, if you can love someone enough to allow them to be exactly what they choose to be, without any expectations or attachments from you, you'll know true peace in your lifetime. True love means you love a person for what they are, not for what you think they should be. This is an open mind and an absence of attachment. In essence, I'm urging you to stop taking your life so personally. You can end any and all suffering by reminding yourself that nothing in the universe is personal. Of course, you've been taught to take life very personally, but this is an illusion. Tame your ego and absolutely free yourself from ever taking anything personally. Keep these thoughts in mind, particularly when you feel lost or unsure of your purpose. My purpose is about giving. I'll direct my thoughts off of me and spend the next few hours looking for a way to be of service to anyone or any creature on our endangered planet. This will bring you back to a realization that it doesn't matter what you do as long as you're able to give. In order to fully give and be of service and ultimately feel purposeful, you must be able to say yes when you ask yourself, do I really possess what it is that I wish to give away?
Being peace. Peace isn't something that you ultimately receive when you slow down the pace of your life. Peace is what you're capable of being and bringing to every encounter and event in the waking moments of your life. Most of us are waging a nonstop internal mental skirmish with everyone we encounter. Being peaceful is an inner attitude that you can enjoy when you've learned to silence your incessant inner dialogue. Being peaceful isn't dependent on what your surroundings look like. It seldom has anything to do with what the people around you think, say, or do. A noiseless environment isn't a requirement. St. Francis's famous prayer states it better than I can. Make me an instrument of thy peace. In other words, St. Francis wasn't asking God to provide him with peace. He was asking for guidance to be more like the peace he trusted was his source. Being peace is different from looking for peace. This principle isn't about merely choosing tranquil thoughts when you're feeling frayed and anxious. I suggest picturing a container deep within yourself out of which all of your thoughts flow. Inside of this container, at its very center, imagine a candle flame. You need to make a commitment that this flame in the center of the container, holding all of your thoughts, will never, ever even flicker, though the very worst may go before you. This is your container of peace, and only peaceful thoughts can fuel this burning candle. You don't need to change your thoughts as much as you need to learn to be an energy of peace lighting the way and attracting serene, harmonious thoughts and beings. In this way, you'll become a being of peace. Obviously, you take this inner receptacle with you wherever you go. When people attempt to put some kind of pressure on you, when you feel overwhelmed, or when situations arise that previously incited your distress or bellicosity, you can immediately turn to your inner candle flame of peace and see how to keep your light glowing. This is being the peace that you wish for yourself. This is offering a matching vibration to your desire to be a tranquil and amicable being rather than a person suffering from the disease of trying to make life go faster. You've already seen the results of that folly, and you notice the symptoms of stress in virtually everyone you meet. As a being of peace, you make a huge impact on those around you. It's almost impossible to be totally stressed out in the presence of someone who has opted to be peace. Peace is a higher and faster energy. When you're being peace, just your presence alone will often nullify the uneasiness and the tension in those around you. In fact, this state causes pheromones of measurable energy to emanate from you. They affect others who become more peaceful without even being aware of the transformation taking place. The secret of this principle for restoring balance to your life is be the peace and harmony you desire. You cannot get it from anything or anyone else. So you're not ready to take Nisargadatta's profound advice and just be? Then work at becoming that being with the inner light of a steady candle flame. Whenever you think something, you must go to this container, select a thought, and send it out into the world. Using this metaphor, the real issue isn't about simply selecting positive, loving thoughts and having your world shift back into balance. The real issue is what's in the container. That is, what's in the heart reservoir you have inside of you to give to others. This container within is connected to an endless supply of love. You need only turn your thoughts to that source to be filled with love. Love for yourself, love for the world, love for life, love for all others, and most significantly, love for your source of being. Then this is all that you'll have available to give away, and consequently, all that returns to you. It's been said that the difference between all of us living at ordinary levels of human consciousness and those we call saints is that they never forget God even for a single moment. They're cheerful when life is difficult, patient when others are impatient, and loving when others respond with hatred. Why? Because of that container. Ordinary people have a container out of which they pluck loving thoughts in certain circumstances. The saint has an internal vessel that contains nothing else out of which and into which love flows freely. So rather than working on simply changing your thoughts in order to become more peaceful and loving, why not shoot for the moon and think like the saint that you are? Focus on that container within. When you continually say, Holy Spirit, guide me now, you'll see your container overflowing with so many loving thoughts that it's impossible for negativity in any form to alter the balance within.
We seem to live in a totally out of balance world where our desires for feeling peaceful are challenged by the myriad non-peaceful energies that are considered newsworthy. But we do have a choice in this matter, and we can choose to realign ourselves energetically with our desire to live in this world peacefully, regardless of what's going on around us, and in spite of the non-peaceful energy we're so often subjected to. Sogyal Rinpoche observed that, quote, "Two people have been living in you all of your life. One is the ego, garrulous, demanding, hysterical, calculating. The other is the hidden spiritual being whose still voice of wisdom you have only rarely heard or attended to," unquote. I'm inviting you to restore some balance by looking for heaven everywhere and listening and attending to that hidden spiritual being that is within you at all times, begging you to pay it more heed.
When you are in rapport with that from which you were intended, when you are in a state of creativity, a state of kindness, a state of love, a state of beauty, a state of receptivity, a state of abundance, when you are in those states of consciousness, you have joined the field from which you originated, and intention and you have become synonymous. And anything that you put your attention on with that rapport has to materialize into the physical world. It has to, because that's how everything is created. And any moment in your life in which you are in a state of anger, hatred, or fear, grief, or anything that is not what the field from which you originally came is like, is a moment in which what you want to attract into your life is impossible. You have a choice. You can either be right and live by your ego, or you can be kind. You can either be angry or you can be love. And at every moment, in 10 Secrets for Success, the 10th secret says, wisdom is avoiding every thought that weakens you. Back in the 18th century, there was a practice in the world called slavery going on. And there was a man named John Newton who was 22 years old, and he was a slave captain, ship captain. And he was bringing a load of human cargo from Senegal in West Africa to South Carolina, 125 human beings to be sold into slavery in this hideous and nefarious practice that was so widespread in the 18th and early 19th centuries in the world. And John Newton was in the midst of a storm, and he thought he was going to die and he was going to lose his life and the lives of all of the people on this cargo in the ship. And he took out an envelope, and on this envelope he wrote down the words to a song. He said, "I once was lost, and now I'm found." It's in a moment that we call an epiphany, a moment in which we reach something called siddhi consciousness, a satori, they call it in Japanese, a satori, which is an instant awakening. And he realized in that moment, as he was writing these words to this song down on the back of this envelope, that what he was doing was in violation of the universal mind from which he originated, that it was against the laws of the universe to treat any other human being or any other creatures of life. Now the storm passed, and he survived, but he looked on that piece of paper that he had written these words on, and he turned his ship around, and he went back to Africa, and he released the 125 people that he had in those holds, and he went back to England, and for the next 55 years, until his 77th birthday, he became the most ardent abolitionist in the world. speaking out against the evils of slavery. In one instant, in Zen Buddhism, they say when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. When you have that level of readiness, whatever you need, as it says in A Course in Miracles, if you knew who walked beside you at all times on this path that you have chosen, you could never experience fear or doubt again. It would never be there for you. For those of you who've decided to quit smoking, it will be easy because you will have guidance there for you at every moment that you ever are tempted to go back, or whatever it is that you want to attract into your life. And the words to that song became perhaps the most spiritual song ever recorded. It's called Amazing Grace. I once was lost, and now I'm found. And it was grace that taught my heart to feel. It was grace. It was God. It was returning to source that turned everything around. Well, when I was 19 years old, I took out a little notebook, and it was one of the first things I wrote down for this book that I was to write 40 years later. And I wrote a note to myself. It said, "Dear Wayne," and I still have it, "don't die with your music still in you." And it became a theme in my life that all of us show up here into this world. We are intended here by a source from which all things are intended. Everything comes from that source. And everything that you needed for this physical journey was in that moment of your conception and even before. But most of us have let go of that dream. Or we don't know how powerful we are. When I was in the 3rd grade, I came home from school, and I said to Mrs. Scarf, which is the lady whose home we lived in, she had 52-some children living in that home, I said, "What's a scurvy elephant?" She said, "A what?" I said, "A scurvy elephant." She said, "Where did you hear that?" I said, "Well, I heard Mrs. Poole, who was my 3rd grade teacher, telling Mrs. Smith, who was the principal, outside of the classroom that Wayne Dyer was in her classroom and that he was a scurvy elephant." She got on the telephone and she called the principal, and the principal said, "Oh, that's Wayne. He gets everything mixed up." She didn't say that he was a scurvy elephant in her classroom. She said that he was a disturbing element in her classroom. And I think you have to understand that becoming a scurvy elephant or a disturbing element is a part of the process of not dying with your music still in you. That there is something that you showed up here to become, just like there was something that allowed you to grow into this body that you're in. The same force, the same field of intention that intended you here to be in this body, in the shape that it is in the size that it is, in the color that it is, in the shape of its eyes, in the color of its hair, whether you have any or don't, whether it falls out or doesn't, all of that. It was all intended here. And also everything that you were to become. And there is a sense inside of you, someplace in a very quiet place, an inner sense, an inner Tahiti, an inner island of peace that knows. You know that you're not this body that you're in. You know where it's going. You know it showed up from nowhere. Nowhere. And when it went from nowhere, it showed up in now here. Nowhere. It's all the same, just a little question of spacing. So now you're in now here, most of you. And you look around and you look at yourself and you watch your body go through its motions, and where the hell do you think it's going? Back to nowhere. From nowhere to now here to nowhere. But while it's here, there is something burning inside every one of us. And all we have to do is understand that strangest secret. And the strangest secret is we become what we think about. Our thoughts are the magic elixir
I remember being in that orphanage, and a snowstorm would come, and there were 2 snow shovels in the basement of that house. And I took that snow shovel that was downstairs. There were 2. One had the edges all curled up, and you couldn't make much money with a snow shovel with edges that were curled up. There was another bright, shiny one that Mr. Scarf had made himself. And I used to go down there when it would start snowing, and it seemed to snow a lot more in those days than it does today. And I would sleep with that snow shovel. And I would go outside at 5 o'clock in the morning, wake myself up, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, and I would shovel everybody's walk on Tucker Street. Everybody. I didn't ask if it was okay and would you like me to and could I and maybe and so on. I just took the initiative and I went out there and shoveled their snow. And then I went back later that morning with my best little Oliver routine because I was cute. It may not look like it now, but I was then. Cute little blonde hair, and I had little, and I would stand there and I would just tell them that I shoveled your snow for you this morning. And sometimes I get a nickel or a dime. I even got a quarter a couple of times. Doesn't sound like much, but that's $4,000 in today's money, okay? And it wasn't like there was something in here that said, this is what you do, and you act upon what it is that you feel in here, because that thought that you have is something in the Course in Miracles that says, when I take this microphone to speak, and I'm being introduced as Gary was introducing me, I repeat a line from A Course in Miracles. And the line that I repeat says, if you knew who walked beside you at all times on this path that you have chosen, you could never experience fear or doubt again. You couldn't do it if you had a knowing that you weren't alone. If you knew it from in here with that burning desire. And it is that connection, it is the ability to go and connect to that